Go Hunt Live show hosted by Todd Nevins.
This is Todd Nevins, and I interview people that had seemingly normal lives and careers going, but they pulled the ripcord to epically reinvent themselves in order to pursue a life full of purpose and passion. This episode is sponsored by PrintDirtCheap.com. Jeff Chrisman, the founder of Print Dirt Cheap, and the crew there are rock stars when it comes to delivering top quality printing at a cheap price. If you've met me in the last 3 years and I handed you a business card, it was printed by Print Dirt Cheap. They're my online digital printing company for everything. They do banners, company letterhead, a ton of direct mail pieces, funky decals, even menus for restaurants, over 30 categories of printing products, and yes, business cards. And they do it fast and they do it cheap. Jeff has streamlined every little aspect of the business to provide the perfect user experience, delivering the best product in the industry. I have personally been to the offices and I have seen it firsthand. But see for yourself. Go to printdirtcheap.com, use promo code GoHuntLife and get $10 off of your order. Or if you want to get a sample of their work, click on Sample Pack and they'll mail you one out for free. Go to printdirtcheap.com, use promo code GoHuntLife for $10 off of your next print job.
Life on the road has been absolutely incredible, and I wish I'd known about this 10 years earlier. I wish I'd known that there was another option. Last Christmas, we looked back and we were like, wow, we've been to this many countries, we've seen this, we've learned this, and I cannot recommend this more highly.
That is Karen King, and her husband and 2 kids left their traditional lives in Australia 19 months ago and have since hit 23 countries, house sitting, Airbnbing, and world schooling. In this episode, we dig into 2 specific areas. What exactly is world schooling, and what are the steps that she's taken to transition their kids from a traditional school to learning on the road? An interesting point that she brings up is that for every 1 year a child is in a traditional school, it will take them 1 month to get acclimated to a new way of learning. And that time frame actually also applies to the parents. The second area that we get into is, of course, the money. 2 to 3 years ago, they knew very little about making money online, but it took a 7-week vacation and for Karen to read the 4-hour work week for the switch to flip and pointed her to an entirely new way of living. We also get tactical, like how do they handle health insurance and a permanent mailing address and cell service when they land in a new country. A lot of really solid takeaways. So my conversation with Karen King starts right now. Karen, thank you for jumping on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And a shout out to Cree Korea, episode number 56 on Go Hunt Live. She's the one that connected us. So I appreciate the introduction to Karen from Cree. All right, Karen, what city are you in? And if you were to walk outside, describe what you would see.
We're actually in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico at the moment, and it's interesting that you asked that because we moved house yesterday, and we've booked something on Airbnb well in advance, and it's a bit of a running joke at the moment because we're only 2.5 kilometres out of the centre of town. But if I walk outside, I feel like I'm almost out bush. We are in a really, I guess, a real local area. Feels a lot more run down than other parts of the city, but you know what? That's all part of the experience. And taxi drivers got completely lost getting us here. It's all part of the fun.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So how old are you? Are you married? And do you have kids?
I am 41. I am married. Yes, I've been married for, too long. Yes, I have 2 kids. I have an almost 13-year-old boy and a 7-year-old daughter.
Okay, almost 13 and 7. All right. What are your primary ways that you make a living right now?
It's a real mixed bag, to be completely honest with you. I earn a fair bit of income from niche sites that I've created and designed to work in conjunction with Google and Amazon to generate income. We also teach how to create niche sites, so that obviously generates some income there. We also have worldschoolingcentral.com, which so far is more of a passion project, but obviously in time I'd like that to grow into something that can really benefit the world schooling community, but also help us along with our income. And then I guess in coming months, we're actually holding a big World Schooling Summit here in San Miguel. So obviously, there'll be some income coming out of that one as well.
But you didn't always do this. You guys had a kind of a normal, traditional life not very long ago. You have been traveling all over the world for the last 2 years with family of 4, traveling all over, house sitting, Airbnbing, and just living anywhere and everywhere, and obviously working from everywhere. Take me back, though, to your lives in 2014, 2015. Where were you living and what were you doing then?
Well, we were based out of Victoria in Australia, so a little town called Terrelden, which is a couple of hours southeast of Melbourne. My husband had been working, since my son was first born, he'd been working offshore on an oil rig as a chef and a cleaner. So he was 7 days away, 7 days home. And I had my own cake decorating business, which was absolutely, it's one of those jobs that, people say, find something you love and you'll never work another day in your life. That was very much the case with my cake decorating. However, over time, I discovered that I was just working so many hours and, really felt like I was completely out of whack with work-life balance. So, we had a traditional life. The kids were, my eldest was in primary school, my daughter was in kindergarten. We did the same, sort of daily life, daily schedule that a lot of people in other countries in the world. So it was just an ordinary Aussie life.
What did you own? Did you have a home and cars and all of the normal stuff?
Yeah, we had a big home that was built. We were lucky enough to secure an amazing block of land with gorgeous views over the little city that we lived in, and we built our dream home up there, and we had 2 cars and all the trimmings that everybody has, a lot of stuff, which I later discovered wasn't really all that necessary.
Well, so if someone were to ask you back then, like the simple question, are you happy? What would the answer have been?
On the surface, yes, I was very happy. But, behind closed doors at home, no, we weren't happy. And I think that was probably a big part of I guess, our turning point was the fact that life was just too serious. We were not happy. My husband was working so hard. I was working so hard. I was missing out on seeing the kids grow. I was on that daily treadmill of same thing every single day. Come the weekends, I was so exhausted that all I wanted to do was sleep. And, that's not a life. What's the point if you're not enjoying yourself? So, no, we weren't happy, not at all.
What was there a final breaking point or tipping point that got you or forced you into considering a drastic alternative? Absolutely.
We sort of reached that point where we identified that we weren't happy. We were too serious. Hubby and I were fighting a lot because we were just so stressed all the time. And so we decided at that point we needed to get away from our lives. We decided to take a 7-week vacation. We spent 3 weeks cruising down the coast of South America. We spent 2 weeks in Bolivia, returning to my host family where I was an exchange student in '94, and then we spent a couple of weeks at Disney World. And the whole point of that was to just get away from our real lives where we were so unhappy and just have a little bit of freedom for a little while. And it was on that trip that I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. And I discovered that there was a completely different way of life available to us. We watching my children in Bolivia when we were there, learning Spanish and learning about the culture and all of these sorts of things. We'd always been big believers in child-led education. And it was kind of a combination of all of these things. We knew we needed to do something different in our lives, and it all just happened at the same time. And reading Tim's book was absolutely the turning point for us.
That book is brought up more often, hands down, on this podcast than any other book. That is such a turning point for a lot of people. So you read the book, and you think, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother way of life out there, earning money online, digital nomads, all of that stuff. Those tools and that way of life. But you get back, let's say you return back after your 7-week vacation. What did you start doing to actually put it in place, like to start this?
Initially, I started maybe not so gently, just trying to convince my husband that this was a great idea. I've always had a very adventurous spirit, and I handle change really well. And if I identify that I'm not happy with something, then I go about trying to improve it. Now, with my husband, on the other hand, he was very much a homebody, and when we first got together, he wasn't interested in travelling anywhere, let alone the States was the only place that he said he would be comfortable to travel. So, travelling the world full time was well outside of his comfort zone. So really, initially, it was just asking the question, how on earth would we actually do this? Mm-hmm. And it was all so completely foreign to us that, at that stage I wasn't aware of, Facebook groups of other, community that are doing the same thing. And but really for me, I made my mind up pretty quickly because I've always loved to travel and I've always believed in child-led education. I really didn't know how it would necessarily work. But again, I've always been the type of person that if I put my mind to something, it will just happen. There's kind of no real choice. It just happens, and I knew that it would. But I just had to convince my husband.
Did you guys set a date? Like, okay, we are going to have everything sold. We are going to launch on this particular date. Like, how did you get to that moment of you leaving Australia on a plane?
So we decided that we would give ourselves, we came back end of January from our vacation. We came back end of January 2015.
15, okay.
And so we decided January 2016 would be our launch date. That obviously there's a whole lot of things that have to happen in that period, but that was our goal, and that was what we worked to.
What was the most challenging part of that 2015 for that 12-month period of time? What was the thing that was most difficult?
Probably staying organised, really. It was, when you're making such an enormous change in your life, it is incredibly overwhelming. For me, though, I was just so excited that excitement drove me to keep going. It was probably just the logistics of all the little things that you need to do in the lead up to essentially giving up life as you know it and stepping out into the unknown. And, really for me, it was just about making sure I wrote my list and stuck to my list and didn't let it overwhelm me. That was probably the biggest thing.
And that involved selling your home, selling cars, selling furniture, selling everything. Was that the process?
Yeah, absolutely. Our house at that stage was probably only maybe 60% finished because we built it to occupancy, but still had a lot of work that we needed to do. So we obviously had to get that all finished off. We had to sell the property. We moved into a small unit in town. We'd gone from this massive 5-bedroom home with all the extras into a tiny little old 3-bedroom unit in town. Sold off one of the cars. We kept one of the cars for a little while. Just everything. As I said, life as you know it, as I guess for me, and I guess for many people, having materialistic items is just such a big part of life. But then when you actually go through the process of selling it all, and for me it was about, well, you know what, I don't have any plans on coming back anytime soon, so I was just selling everything. It was quite the experience, but, I look back now and it was just all part of the fun and all part of the excitement.
And how are you? Okay, so you were getting ready to get out in January 2016. You had sold everything. I mean, what about like this logistical things? Like, do you have a mailing address in Australia still for credit cards and retirement and just stuff? Do you have anything like that there?
Yeah, we do. There's quite a few services around. We use one called Hot Snail. So all of our mail gets directed to this company.
What is it? What's the name of it?
It's called hotsnail.com.au. And it's a service that scans all of our mail and sends it to us electronically, and then from there we can decide whether we want them to shred it, whether we need something forwarded to a different mailing address, or whether they can just, throw it out. So, having said that, though, nearly 2 years on, we don't actually get a lot of mail to that address anymore because I think people have realised we're not there.
Good. So no more direct mail pieces. Excellent. All right. So how are you? The things that that come up that we're going to hit here in a second are like, okay, the kids. How have they adapted to schooling behind that, and money? How are you going to pay for it? My first question, though, is where were you going first in January 2016? Where did you go?
Well, we started off we managed to pick up a house in Perth, Western Australia.
All right.
Initially, though, we weren't really sure where to go. When I've always been a big planner, so of course I put hours into planning out the best itinerary and all of this. But there are so many options out there in the world that I was completely overwhelmed. So we actually put it up for a vote with our family and friends and said, okay, here's 5 places that we want to go to. What do you reckon we should do? And Vietnam was the one that won, and funnily enough, we've never been to Vietnam. So we actually managed to pick up a house in Perth in Western Australia. We were there for a month, and then we headed to the United Arab Emirates for a month of house sitting there in Al Ain, which is about an hour and a half out of Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So it was quite the intro to living overseas, that's for sure.
And I've interviewed a number of people that are house sitters, but please recap what specifically house sitting is, and do you make money? How does that work?
Okay, so house sitting it's an amazing opportunity where a homeowner and a traveller come together and exchange services, essentially. The homeowner gives us free accommodation. They continue to pay their electricity and all of their regular bills. We look after their home and any animals that they have in the home. So we don't earn specifically, but it's also free accommodation. So by my calculations in 2016, we saved ourselves about $25,000 in accommodation costs. So
$25,000.
They may as well have paid us. Yeah.
And how many countries have you hit since January 2016?
I think at last tally we had hit 23.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, busy time.
You have hit 23 countries in a year and a half.
Yeah, and in that I think we've just completed our 20th house sit. So we've picked up house sits in places, throughout Southeast Asia. We were in Thailand, in Malaysia, South Korea. We then did Christmas in China. And after that, we headed over and did a month in Sweden. We're house sitting essentially here in San Miguel. We are in an Airbnb for the next month, but outside of that, we've been fully booked with house sits from the time we arrived in May, and we're fully booked up until mid-December.
Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Click Placement, a digital agency designing Google AdWords and pay-per-click marketing strategies for startups, small businesses, and even people building a side hustle. Hit up clickplacement.com to start a conversation. If you would like to personally support the Go Hunt Life podcast, go to patreon.com/Go Hunt Life to make a donation.
And how are you finding the house sits? Which website do you use?
Well, there's quite a few out there. Throughout Southeast Asia, trustedhousesitters.com was exceptional. From there, throughout Europe, I love House Sit Match. Trusted House Sitters as well is really good in Europe. And then in Mexico, you don't see quite as many come up on Trusted House Sitters, but there is a Mexico-specific house sitting site called housesitmexico.com. So it's a bit of a combination. I keep my eye open and look at all of them at all of the time, but generally we just find something that we think will work with our schedule, and we make our plans accordingly.
Interesting. All right. So back to my earlier question. Let's jump into the kids and the schooling first. What is the definition? And you run a website that is called worldschoolingcentral.com. What exactly is world schooling?
World schooling is there's lots of different, terms for taking your children out of school and schooling them. So whether it's homeschooling, unschooling is very popular at the moment, and unschooling is more about letting kids learn through their day-to-day life, as they do before they start traditional education. World schooling is an extension on that, where children learn through their day-to-day life that incorporates travel. So for us, it's been absolutely exceptional. And I always come back to history, for example. When I was in school, I just couldn't get my head around it. I was so bored. It was so dry. And, I'd learned what I needed to learn to pass the exams, and really it didn't stick because I wasn't engaged. My son, on the other hand, we spent, 5 days in Berlin. So, he learned all about the Berlin Wall. We've learned so much through various resources from being there. We went out and saw a concentration camp, and that then led to our time in Sweden, where we discovered, a castle area where the people from the concentration camp were then taken when they were liberated, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very hands-on. You're in the place, and it actually means so much more when you're there, touching the Berlin Wall, as opposed to reading about it in a dry textbook. So.
Wow, that sounds outstanding. What about the transition, though? You in one of your blog posts, you speak to the fact that the kids took some time to kind of settle in, and you get the mindset of being like traditionally schooled out of their mind. Like, what was that transition like for the kids?
I think, for my daughter, it was exceptionally easy because she'd done kindergarten, but she never started primary school. So for her, it was just an extension of what she was already doing. We've always, just in day-to-day life, used every opportunity we can to learn about things. So for her, that was just a continuation. For my son, however, it was a much harder transition because he'd done 6 years of schooling. And I think what we came to the conclusion that he had quite a negative connotation around the word education or learning or whatever, whereas my daughter, she just gets so excited because, it's a game, it's fun, there's no negativity around the word learning. So for my son, for him, he associated learning with sitting down in class, filling out sheets of paper, all of that sort of school-related thing. So for him, it did take quite some time. But what we decided, probably more for our benefit than the children's, was that we would take 6 months where we would not worry about the schooling, and that they often refer to that as deschooling, which is the process of getting yourself out of the process of being at school, the testing, the day-to-day life of the school, and just accepting that, it is okay to not be on that schedule, et cetera, et cetera. What we discovered, though, more than anything, was that us as parents, we needed to de-school as well because, my husband did 11 years at school, I did 15 years at school, or 16 years at school. And so for us, we needed to get out of that as well. Our first inclination was, they should be studying every day. We need to test them to make sure they're up to speed with everybody else. And, for us, at times, it's almost been panic stations that, we're not doing what we need to do. But in reality, it turned out that 1 month per year that they recommend for deschooling worked for all of us. So for my son, I started noticing quite a difference after 6 months. For me, it took a good 16 months before I was able to really fully relax and appreciate just how incredible world schooling is and that it does work. As parents, we all want the best for our children, but world schooling or unschooling is a big breakaway from what we've always known as parents or as students. So, it did take quite a long time to become comfortable with it.
So it's 1 month for every year that you've gone through schooling. So you were 16 months in. That's about now. Like you've just passed that this spring. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we hit 19 months yesterday. So,
okay, yeah.
As we hit sort of 14, 15, 16 months, I really, without going, 1 month per year is up, I really found that I was all of a sudden settling into it and just, the kids blow me away with what they learn. My daughter she'll sit for hours doing maths sums just because she can, and she just loves it. And, for me, one of the things I thought of is, we'll never have to do sheets again like they do at school, sit down, fill out these sheets. My daughter loves doing sheets. So, I had to find some websites and print off some math sheets. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, we laugh at the fact that she just finds all the, grade 1 stuff too easy. So she's doing year 8 maths because that's what she finds fun. So, she's able to work at her own speed, at her own interest level. Her reading is behind what might have occurred if she was in a traditional school, but there's absolutely no pressure. So we sit down and we'll read a little book together every couple of days, and the minute she's had enough, we stop. And then we come back to it a couple of days later, and, it's all about just following the interest that they have and making sure that they're engaged. And it's incredible how quickly they can learn things when they are engaged. And that's probably been one of the biggest things we've learned in the last 19 months.
What about their friends and the socializing and all that with the other kids their age?
Oh my goodness. I have to tell you, we have a better social life now than we ever had at home in Australia. We've been so fortunate. The number of amazing families we've met in the last 19 months has just blown me away. I really didn't appreciate just how much of an impact these other families would have. One thing that I would say is that, yes, my kids socialise with kids their own age, but they also socialise with kids much, much younger and much, much older. There's not that, at school, the only time in life that you're really in a room with the same, people the same age is when you're at school. Outside of that, you look at your own friends base, everybody's different, has a different age. So my kids socialise with whoever's in the room, who wants to play a game. Oh, good. It doesn't matter if you're 13 or 3 or whatever the case may be. It's just about interacting with other people. And honestly, we actually have to force ourselves to have days at have days at home, because otherwise we just get too exhausted from all the socializing that we do.
All right. So as the kids get older, and let's say at one point in a couple of years, your son's name is Brody. Let's say Brody wants to be a veterinarian. Like, how do you, or something where you need a dentist, a veterinarian, something where you need a specific type of education. How do you transition him into something like that?
Well, the great thing about technology in today's day and age is everything is available online. If we had to specifically look at going to a certain place so he can, get any additional education and things, we certainly could do that. But honestly, the biggest thing, one of the big things that we've discovered is that by world schooling, they're not just learning, but they're learning how to learn. So we don't say, okay, today we're going to learn about the Berlin Wall. We're about to go to Berlin and we're like, hey, look, we've got this documentary about what happened with the Berlin Wall. Let's sit down and, watch a movie tonight. So we do that. And I probably believe in this quite firmly, because my whole cake decorating business that I had before we started, all of the skills that I learnt to run that business and to be a cake decorator, everything was learned on Google and YouTube. So, I know firsthand that if you have a passion for something, you will seek out the information you need and you will make it happen. So, if he has a passion to be a dentist or a veterinarian or whatever the case may be, we will help him find the information that he needs. And, if he's passionate about that, then absolutely he'll make that happen for himself.
Love it. Yeah, that is that's also a common theme. Like I talk to people that have, I use the term like reinvented their lives, and they're doing something completely different. But in reality, like on the surface, I guess you guys have reinvented. There's no doubt. But you have used all of the tools and skills that you had up to 2016, and then you've just implemented them differently into a different life, and here you are. That is awesome. And you are right. There is so much information out there. If you want to learn about something, man, go to YouTube. There's somebody out there that has a video on it. It's really impressive.
We joke with my son. My son, I keep saying to him, you need to do a massage course because he kids being kids, he gives me a little shoulder massage and he does an incredible job. So the other day he and I sat down and we found a massage course online, and we went through it together and we learned about different muscles, and then we paused the video and we did some research on where this particular muscle is that you need to work on, and he was so engaged because he wanted to do this. I mean, his motivation was he wants to charge to give me a massage, but he was really interested. So we just sat down and did it together. So that's one thing that I would say. A huge thing that has blown me away is how much I've learned in the last 19 months through my kids learning. So, they come to me with a question and if I don't know, well, generally, even if I know the answer, we will sit down together and we will research so that we get a bigger, broader answer. Or I will say to them, let's jump online and have a look. So they actually lead the way in terms of finding out what the answer is. But the amount I've learned through their learning and the amount they actually now teach me because of how interested they are in certain subjects has absolutely blown my mind.
Amazing. All right. So now let's transition into money. You're saving $25,000 a year on living expenses, but you are traveling to 23 different countries, and that costs a lot of money in airline tickets and trains and Ubers and all of those things. How do the finances work now, and how have they evolved since you guys got started? Initially, I'm assuming you were working off of savings until you were able to get your online income up. Is that wrong or right?
Well, for the first 9 months, believe it or not, my husband actually commuted from Southeast Asia to Melbourne each week, which often blows people away when they hear that. But initially our plan was his company had asked everybody for a long time to move to 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So our plan was he would go home, do his 2 weeks of work, and then he would join us wherever we were in Southeast Asia. Unfortunately, though, when it came to the reality of the situation, they said, no, you have to stay on 7 days offshore, 7 days onshore. So, we just, I guess when you want to do something bad enough, you make it work. And I worried for a long time during that 9 months that he would get sick of this. He was flying 8 to 10 hours every week.
Wow.
And he said to me, you know what? No, it doesn't worry me at all because I go and do my job. I fly back to you and I get a 5-day vacation every fortnight. So, I don't have to do house maintenance. I don't have to do, all those things you do in your day-to-day life. So for the first 9 months, we still had his income. So
okay.
there was no concerns financially. At the 9-month mark, though, he got made redundant. So that was a bit of a shock to the system. And so at that point, he did receive a redundancy payment, and so we've been living off that since then as we've grown our online income. So we're sort of, I guess, as we're using that, our online income is growing and they're kind of starting to balance each other out.
Okay, so what is your biggest expense right now? Is it plane tickets?
Well, right now we've been settled in Mexico nearly 5 months now. So we haven't flown much in the last 5 months. Before that, absolutely, yeah, there was plenty of plane tickets in there. But the thing that most people don't understand is that when you actually compare how much it costs you to live your day-to-day life, when you actually work out all the expenses you have, travel doesn't have to be any more expensive. For us, for example, in Australia, we were spending 4,500 Australian dollars. So I guess that's about 3,600 off the top of my head US dollars. We were spending that per month, and that was to live a very basic life. So with health insurance and car payments, rent, or house payments, whichever. That didn't include, going out to dinner once or twice a week or, any of those extras. It was just about getting by. We're now spending, our average over the last 19 months has been about the 3,500 Australian dollars per month. So, and that includes everything. That includes all of our flights. We eat out, well, I'd probably say 5 times a week at least. So it's a very, very different lifestyle, and we're spending a whole lot less.
And what's that in US dollars? 3,500 Australian. What's that in US dollars?
I think you're looking at about $2,600 off the top of my head.
$2,600 a month. Okay.
Yeah.
What about healthcare and some of the expenses that are consistent every single month? Like, I don't know, cell phone bills, healthcare. How does that all work?
So we have health insurance. Well, we have travel insurance that we purchased before we left. So that covers us for all the unexpected things that could come up. As far as actual medical costs and things like that, it's so much cheaper. In the country, we've focused our travels around places that are known to be quite affordable, very affordable.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout Southeast Asia, the cost of living was so much less that, when we did need to seek medical help or get medication, whatever the case may be, it was much more affordable. So, I know for people that are travelling outside of the US that they're quite often just blown away at how cheap the medical costs here. Here we can go and see a doctor, like a clinic attached to the side of a pharmacy. I think it's about 100 pesos, which is, about $5.
Yeah, $5.
So, and then from there, when we need medication, we can just walk into the pharmacy. And even if you've got a script, it's quite often cheaper to buy it without the script because the pharmacist will say, we've got this generic brand, do you want this? So you can get most of the medication you need without a script. So, if we know that we're coming down with a sinus infection or something along those lines, or something generic that we just need to grab something for, then it's quite easy to do that. We've been quite fortunate that we haven't had too many problems. My daughter did get an ear infection in China. That was quite expensive to go and see a doctor there. My husband actually got an ear infection in Miami when we were there, which once we arrived in Mexico turned into Bell's palsy. So he had to go and have a CT scan, which was $1,100. So again, very, very thankful for our travel insurance at that point in time. So I wouldn't want to travel without travel insurance because I think to date we've saved, it's covered about $3,000 worth of medical expenses.
Is there a travel insurance website that you would recommend?
We use, I've gone completely blank. Columbus Direct.
Columbus Direct.
However, I don't believe that it's accessible for the US market at the moment, but I do know for Australia and the UK market that it's accessible. And they've been really good. Even, as far as when our bags got delayed here in Mexico, we were 4 or 5 days without one of our bags, and we travel very light. We have carry-on only. So that bag had most of our clothes. So after 24 hours, the insurance company said, well, you've got $1,000 Australian per person to cover anything you need. So, go shopping and buy what you need.
Wow. And you guys are traveling carry-on only. That is impressive.
We are. Yeah. And I love it. I cannot imagine going back to when we did our vacation, our 7-week vacation in 2014-15, we had, I think, 105 kilograms of luggage. And now I think about that, I just roll my eyes. I can't imagine going back to that. We have 7 kilograms per person and a laptop bag or a tech bag as well.
That is great. Oh, what about, I'm calling you on a cell phone and you have a Mexico cell phone starting with +52. Do you have a specific cell phone plan or how do you handle cell phones in different countries?
No. When we left Australia, unfortunately, we were under a contract, so we had to continue paying that out. But those contracts are now over. Now we generally just buy a new SIM card, whichever country we get to. And, anybody that needs us, we give them those phone numbers. But for the most part, people really don't contact us by mobile very much. It's actually quite unusual to hear a mobile phone ring because, everything we do, we do online.
So looking back on the last 2 years, was there ever a point, we had to jockey around this conversation. Your daughter was sick and you guys were transitioning from one part to another. Have you ever reached near breaking point where you're thinking, man, this was fun, but being a little bit more settled sounds great about now. Have you ever reached that point?
In terms of wanting to just give up and go home, absolutely not. Life is so much better than it ever was. And in saying that, we still have our arguments. The kids still argue and fight and carry on, but I'd much rather do that in Mexico or Spain or Sweden or wherever. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it wherever we are. So, outside of that, no, I really haven't. The only thing I would say is that when we arrived in Mexico, I was just tired. I was so incredibly tired. I worked out the other day that in the last 19 months, we have lived in, I think it was 55 different homes. So it had averaged out to be about 10 and a half days per property. So, we've done lots of sort of 1 month house sits, but then we've done little sessions, little 1 month sections where we kind of jump all around Europe and just spend, 2 days here and 3 days there sort of scenario. So by the time we got here, I said to my husband, look, I just need to settle for a little while. So we've settled in San Miguel, but the explorer part of me and the part of me that loves constant change is being fed by the fact that we're still house sitting. So we're moving each month, but we've got the familiarity of the one city that we're situated in for. Well, we're here until February at this stage. So.
Okay, so you're going to stay in Mexico through February right now?
We are, yeah. We're holding in January. We're holding a big world schooling summit for families just like us that are travelling or want to travel or are interested in finding out more. So we'll have actually spent, I think, about 9 months here preparing for that summit. Really getting to know the city and being able to plan some amazing activities so that we can first and foremost get the community together, because as I said earlier, some of the friendships I've made during the last 19 months they're lifelong friendships, and these are people that when you meet up, you may not have seen them for 6 months, but you meet up again and you're best friends again, and it's very easy to make friends when you're on the road because we've all got this one thing in common, this love of travel and world schooling. So yeah, we'll be here until February so that we can get that all set up, and we're really excited with all the plans that we've got lined up, and really looking forward to getting a big group of world schoolers here to explore San Miguel because it's absolutely an amazing city.
Incredible. Okay, so you're building your online income as well. How reliable has Wi-Fi been in Mexico and then the other countries?
Well, not always great. Here in Mexico, it's been up and down. We've had some tense moments where, I'm trying to run a webinar or something like that and the internet drops out completely, have a big storm and the internet disappears sort of scenario. It's just part of life. It's just part of the experience. So, we get really frustrated at times, and, we loved Sweden where we were getting speeds of, I think, 270 megabits per second.
Oh, my gosh.
It was ridiculous. It was so good. Whereas now in our last house, the previous house, we were getting speeds of, I think, 4 megabits per second. Mm-hmm. So, you take it as it comes, and that's just part of the fun and the experience.
So what advice do you have for the person and a family of 4 sitting at a dinner table and just like, man, we've got a huge house. We are in a grind. There's got to be something more to life. You only live once kind of thoughts that you guys went through. What advice do you have to those parents that are sitting there thinking, okay, do I really want to pull the kids out of a traditional school and travel and learn on the road? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that life on the road has been absolutely incredible, and I wish I'd known about this 10 years earlier. I wish I'd known that there was another option, that, we got into the usual, be it the American dream or the Australian dream of, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you get locked into a mortgage, you get your car, car payments, all of that sort of stuff. I really didn't know anything else existed, and for me, what I discovered at that point is that was really kind of just existing. Now we're living, when we got to Christmas and New Year's of last year, we looked back and said, for the first time in our lives, it blew me away how much we'd done in our year. Normally you get to Christmas and it's like, oh, wow, that was a really fast year. What did we really get done? It's just sort of more of the same year in, year out. last Christmas we looked back and we were like, wow, we've been to this many countries, we've seen this, we've learned this, and just, I cannot recommend this more highly. And if anybody wants to find out more information, our website, worldschoolingcentral.com, is a great place to start. But I would even say we have a Facebook group as well, so worldschoolingcentral.com. And I would absolutely say to people, come and join our group and ask questions. Because the one thing I didn't have when I got started was a group of people that I could learn from. And I didn't discover that until well after we'd made the decision. And the one thing that I think everybody in our World Schooling Central community would agree is that the forum that we have on Facebook is an incredibly supportive group, and we are all more than willing to help newbies and help answer questions. And beyond that, if people want to reach out to me personally, I love helping new people understand this way of life, because honestly, it is absolutely the best thing that we've ever done with our lives. And if I can help one other family do it, then, my job's done.
You are in it for all of the right reasons. That is awesome. Again, it's worldschoolingcentral.com. And also you mentioned nichesitebootcamp.com, and also jump on the Facebook group. And I will have all of these links in the show notes as well. Karen, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for jumping on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really have.
Don't forget to hit up the rock stars at printdirtcheap.com. Use promo code GoHuntLife for $10 off of your next print job. For fast, cheap, and high-quality online printing, it's printdirtcheap.com. Hey, Life Hunters, thank you for listening to this episode of Go Hunt Life. If you like the show and would like to support it, go to iTunes and do this. Subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and review it. It helps. And thank you. If you or someone that you know has quit their normal life to follow their dreams, I would love an introduction and maybe interview them on the show. You can find me at GoHuntLife.com and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at Go Hunt Life. Until next time, stay weird, dare greatly, and ripcord out.